and welcome to today's Energy Central webinar, Rewiring Utility Planning, Transforming Property Data into Actionable Intelligence. We are so glad you guys are all joining us today. So before we get started, a big thank you to Korem for making today's session possible. And now I'm going to hand things over to Omri to kick things off. So Omri, welcome and take it away.
Awesome. Thanks, Megan. Thank you for the introduction and those housekeeping notes. Welcome, everyone. Hope everyone's doing good. We're going to be here today for about 30 minutes to an hour. I hope we can deliver a good session for you guys. And we're going to be talking about utility and rewiring utility planning, transforming property data into actionable intelligence. To deliver this presentation, I'm joined by my amazing colleagues. So I'm Maurice Charpentier. I'm part of the marketing team here at Korem. I handle quite a lot of things, but one of my favorite parts is doing these webinars and being able to talk really about our products and how things can help you guys on your everyday basis. But I do want to give it over to Leah and to Scott to introduce themselves really quickly. Leah, how about you go first?
Yeah, so I'm Leah Roussel. I'm a GIS expert at Korem. I did my master and my bachelor in geomatic engineering, so I could say that I'm a spatial data enthusiast in the team.
Oh, Scott, I don't know if it's just on my end. I don't hear you.
I'm Scott DiDiceno. I work on the pre-sale side, the technical side of sales. And I basically help sales guys and Omri explain what we do, explain how the data can be used, do proof of concepts, things like that. So I'm the nerd of the group.
All right, awesome. Thank you, Scott, and thanks, Leah. So let's take a brief look at what we're going to be talking about today. It should be a pretty good session. We're going to start with talking about some challenges that we're currently seeing in the utilities industry. Then we're going to jump into property data, which is going to be one of the big topics for today. Leah's going to share a brief demo that should be really interesting, that just a little nugget for later. There should be some AI in there, which is going to be great to see. And then Scott's going to bring it home with some utilities use cases, and how property graph plays a role in those. So onto those challenges, there's really four main challenges that we've been seeing our clients deal with. This is based on clients in the US and in Canada, some of the biggest utility players on the market, and seeing what not only their challenges are, but what their big focus are going into the next few years. The first of those is network expansion planning. How do you plan where to expand, how to expand in the most efficient way possible? The next is risk resilience. So as we all know, with changing climates, there has been more and more environmental risks, for example, on your networks. So how do you deal with that? How do you become more resilient? The next part, which is directly tied to that, is your asset management and your outage response. Mostly people today don't want long outages. You need to figure out how to get everything back online the fastest way possible and to be prepared for big outages. So how do you do that in an efficient manner? And finally, customer analytics. More and more, your customers are going to be more demanding about what they want, and you having a clear picture of your customers, who they are, what they want, etc., and be proactive with their needs is going to give the best results. So let's go through those a little bit, one at a time. Let's start with network planning, network expansion planning. So when we think about network expansion, the challenge isn't just adding more infrastructure, right? It's doing it intelligently and doing it efficiently. Utilities really need to identify new serviceable areas quite quickly, and especially in fast-growing areas, you're going to want to be some of the first ones there to be able to be in that market and get the competitive advantage. And really, the way to do it is through geospatial data. It's really going to play a critical role in being able to be the first on market and expanding in the most efficient way possible. It's going to give us a more granular visibility into where development is happening. For example, which properties are ready for connection, and even future growth patterns, so that you can plan further ahead than what's currently being built. And once we know where to expand, the next step is infrastructure design. And here by design, I'm not talking about the design of your specific substation, right? I'm talking about the design of the network as a whole. Because it's not just drawing a line on a map, oh, this is the fastest way to get there on a map, that must be the best way to do it. No, it's about optimizing routes, it's about minimizing cost, and it's about ensuring that we meet the demand without overbuilding at the same time, because we always want to stay profitable, right? And property data is going to help us understand land use. It's going to help us understand the zoning and even the physical constraints that could impact our construction. And finally, when you're expanding, you can't ignore regulatory and environmental constraints, right? So expansion plans must respect protected areas, that must take into account things such as flood zones and even local regulations. So how do you get a picture of all of that together on a property by property level visibility? Well, that comes through, for example, geospatial data and property data. Having a singular view of all these aspects is going to reduce delays and reduce compliance risks, and it's going to be able to move forward in your network expansion plans a much faster and a much safer way. Once you have started expanding, the next challenge is really managing it effectively and responding quickly when things go wrong, because we all know things are going to go wrong. Utilities operate thousands of assets usually. So from, if you're talking about electricity utilities, there's transformers, there's poles, there's substations, and keeping track of all of it is critical. Property data helps us maintain an accurate inventory of your network, and is going to help build predictive maintenance so that we can anticipate failures before they actually happen. But more importantly, when failures happen, when outages do occur, speed matters. You want to get everything back online as quickly as possible and in the smartest way possible. Work order optimization is really about sending the right crews to the right place at the right time. By mapping assets to property level data, we can prioritize high impact areas. So that could be dense neighborhoods. It could be critical facilities such as hospitals, schools, things like that. You're going to want to get them online back first. So knowing how each parcel, each property is being utilized and what's on it is going to help you build a better plan for what should be addressed first. And finally, compliance and safety are obviously non-negotiable. Regulators today expect detailed audits, and property data ensures that we know exactly what assets you have and where, and exactly they meet the safety standards of a location. So being able, once again, to tie that location to whatever regulation is in place in that location, and knowing if you're meeting standards is going to be incredibly important. And it's also going to help you reduce your risk, which brings us to the next challenge. What happens when the unexpected strikes, right? How do you plan as much as possible for the unexpected? By definition, that is quite difficult to do because it's unexpected, but risk resilience is really about preparing for and responding to a lot of things, including natural disasters. So that could be hurricanes, floods, wildfires is the big one that we've been seeing lately, and even seismic activity if you're in a location that has seismic activity. And the first step to being able to assess the risk in an area is to be precise in your impact assessment. You don't want to build your risk on a zip code level. That's way too wide. You need to know what your risk is on a property by property level to be able to know exactly how each piece of your infrastructure is going to be affected. Building on a property by property level allows us to prioritize restoration efforts for critical infrastructure like hospital emergency services, like I was saying in the previous slide, but also it's going to help build a more granular risk modeling by combining the property data with hazard layers, such as flood zones, such as the wildfire risks, or even maybe wind exposure. We can really predict the vulnerabilities and plan mitigation strategies before the disasters actually hit. It goes beyond broad regional analysis and gives us actionable insights on individual property levels. And finally, the last challenge I wanted to get into today is customer analytics. Utilities no longer are just delivering power, they're really delivering experience. We can't go without electricity today. We need it more and more. With the rise of a lot of things such as EV vehicles and all of that, it's even more important that the power grid be ready to match what the customers want. And customer analytics is how we understand and anticipate the needs of our customers. Demand forecasting helps us really predict consumption patterns so we can plan capacity and avoid shortages. Customer segmentation allows us to group customers by behavior, by property type, by usage, and is going to enable you to tailor certain programs to match that customer segmentation, or even maybe is going to come and affect your pricing models. And finally, service optimization is about improving reliability and efficiency, knowing which customers need proactive maintenance, for example, or energy saving initiatives. It all comes together into what we commonly refer to as your customer 360 view, where we're going to combine your data with your customers' data, with their property data, with their usage, with demographics, with the risk factors we talked about in the previous slide, all to build a real complete structure. And it's not just about the data. It's about really building a trust with your customers. If you understand your customers, you're going to deliver something that they are happy with, and they're going to be able to trust and stay with you in the long run. So everything I just covered here is quite wide. It's very different use cases. It's very different challenges, but they are all built on one thing they have in common. It's all built on geospatial data. But I mentioned lots of different data sets, not data sets, but data types in the previous slides really quickly, but they're all part of what we call geospatial data. But what exactly is geospatial data? Well, it's a wide array of things. There's a lot more than people really know to begin with if you're not an expert in the field. But really, these on your screen are a beginning subset that everything that we're going to talk about today is built on. There's the fundamental data types that go, for example, for what the address points are, for zip codes, things like that. There's the enrichment data that are going to come and plug into your base layer of data to give more information. So that's often the demographic data, for example. And then there's all the risk layer data that we mentioned. Today, we really wanted to focus on one type of data, which is the property data. And to take it away and give us more details on that, I'm going to pass it on to Léalie.
Thank you, Amaury. So as with many industry, the utility sector is evolving to need higher precision and accurate data about the world that it operates. So as mentioned by Amaury, solid data can no longer be used for complex and advanced challenges in the utility industry. Thus, geospatial data comes into play when adding values to existing information in the utility industry. This is where the property graph data comes into play, providing the essential services with granular insights that enable precise risk assessment and asset tracking at the property level, rather than the broad regional scales. So, these data sets contain detailed information and are available through different formats, such as flat file, geographic format like shapefile, or even via an API. So the flat file provides data in a static and downloadable format like CSV or text file. Additionally, with weekly updates to ensure the data you have is the most recent one, compared to the API that allows dynamic or real-time access to the data through programmable requests, making it better for automation and up-to-date information. This gives you the flexibility to choose the integration method that fits your system architectures and workflows. So one of our partners precisely has a product on their portfolio covering information about property under 3 sets of geospatial data. So first, we have the address points. They deliver the exact location for individual, and they are critical for accurate asset mapping and service delivery. Second, we have the building footprints. They provide the shape and size of structures that are crucial for planning infrastructure upgrades and assessing load requirements. Finally, we have the parcel boundaries. So they define the property limits, helping utilities understand land ownership and optimize right-of-way management. Sorry. With these three data sets, we have a very solid and complete product. The information about these products are attributes. In addition to having multiple attributes and information to each data set, you can see in the image at the bottom left of at the bottom left corner that that the parcels, buildings, and addresses are interconnected together through unique identifiers, which ensure consistency and enable seamless integration across different layers of data. Additionally, these identifiers allow linking to external data sets, such as businesses, for further enriching the property profile of the customer. Finally, the address change delta file keeps your data current by tracking updates over time, ensuring your data remains accurate. Together, these products create a solid product for the utility industry, empowering utilities to operate smarter and more efficiently. So as mentioned earlier, the property graph data has a ton of attributes that are the precisely property attributes. They help give context of the customers. So here's a small subset of all the attributes available. So let's look at some. We have the address points that contains many details around the address. The building footprints as internal and external characteristics about the building, the elevation to the ground, the rooftop material, and the parcels as ground elevation and land use. Precisely property attributes go far beyond classic address details, building boundaries, and parcel elevation. They provide utilities with powerful insights for smarter asset management, infrastructure planning, and risk mitigation, including the property tax and sale information to support strategic investment decision and forecast growth in high-value areas, the replacement cost and assessment values to estimate potential damage costs for utility assets and prioritize resilience measures, and owners and tax information to improve customer engagement for energy efficiency programs and billing accuracy, for example. In addition, enrich links to external datasets such as Dun & Bradstreet, Places, Overture, and upcoming GeoX add valuable context to each property. By connecting to comprehensive risk data sets across multiple risk types like coastal flood, risk, crime, and historical weather, utilities can evaluate all exposures before planning, ensuring more accurate risk modeling, optimize infrastructure investment, and improve service reliability. So I just want to point out that this is a subset of all the available attributes, and many others can be used for a complete analysis of the environment. So now let's take a look at the data and its relationship and action. So let me just share my screen. Okay, so just that. With Korem, we've built a simple interface to showcase the property graph data using the property graph API. So we can either enter here an address or a coordinate to get the different information and relationships between the product. So here, if I enter an address, we can see, sorry, here. So first and foremost, we can visualize on a map the address we entered here but also the building related to that address, the other addresses related to that building, and all the corresponding parcels. As I mentioned earlier, the property graph data as unique identifiers for the building, the addresses, and also the parcel IDs as well. We can observe the relationships between the objects here in the table to your right, where we see the address count and the parcel count for the building. This is interesting to visualize the information about one address, but all the related objects to it. In this case, the property graph uncovers information that we couldn't have using traditional methods. Here, we have another useful case for the data graph API is to see if the address has units. So in this case, you can see that for one address, you have one building and one parcels, but you can also see that the address count is at 420. And if we switch here, we can see all the full addresses with the different units. So this could be really useful to quantify the number of people that lives in that building or under the same address. And we can see all the way up here the different units. But if we go here in the property tab, we also have different information about the tax address for each address as the owner for each related address. Here, but we can also see, sorry, just move that here. We can also see many different attributes such as the year built, the area, the living area, this market value, tax amount, tax year of the different property that can give a complete overview of the customer or the property. Also, we can, since precisely as risk layers, we can combine those risk layers with the property data graph layer for a proper decision with all the information gathered at one place. So here you can see that for this address, you have the different information, the risk information about flood zone, hail risk, or wildfire risk. There's another example, I think here. Sorry, here. So you have all the information gathered at one place. In other words, it helps quantify the level of risk for each building. Finally, we also have the crime details that are available through a block group level, which is very granular to help add context to your building. And finally, all right, so finally, we have a little chat bot with AI integrated in our interface, which can you can ask any question or a lot of questions about one address or building. So this is the interface, and for the sake of the demo, I already entered some questions just to show you. So give me example of question I can ask you. It returns the different possible question about the property and building information, risk assessments, neighborhood and demographics, school education, location service, address validation, but also utilities and services. So if we want to ask the utility serviceability for this address, we have the different information the AI chatbot returns, such as the electric service, natural gas service, water service, sewer service, and telecommunications. So this could be really useful to have like all the information gathered in one place to help you build really rich context about your customers. So that's pretty much it too. For me, I'll let Scott present you the different use case with the property graph data.
Thank you, Leah. Excellent. There you go. So we talked about how property relates to some of those environmental risks. So we had a few of them in the list there, and that listing list again, to reiterate it, that's just a demo and API that we made up with some information on the back end that is this actual property that we have that's available through a service, through an API. So all those questions can be asked, and it should be called out too that you saw a map there. We can actually get some of the polygon data back, which is kind of cool. So the risks that we can talk about, flood, fire, hail, tornado, earthquake, all that stuff, those are sometimes large areas, but we have the very fine lines as far as where the edge of some of the things are. And sometimes it's a matter of where it has happened before, there's a propensity for it to happen again. So some of them are hard science. In other words, a fire, this is a fire risk in this exact area. Some of it is, well, hailstorms went through these areas. This is how big it was. This is how much damage it did. It's a higher propensity to happen again type of idea. But really, why does that matter? The matter is really when it comes down to accuracy. We've been showing you property data, my house, your house, apartment, those types of things. But it doesn't have to be just that. You guys have data. You guys have property. You have facilities. You have power lines up, you have transformers in the ground, you have all different types of facilities, plant, whatever you want to call it, located on planet Earth, and that relates and interacts with these same types of risks, just like someone's property does. Next slide, please. Let's talk about some of those interactions. Here we got the idea of flood. And in this one, you can see the smaller line might be the main river, and then the broader buffer on the side could be where the flood went. How does this relate to you guys? Well, one, you have your own plant data. You can take your own plant data and you can compare that to the buildings. And you know from yours, if this part goes out, you know what that went out, but you don't know what may be down below there. And so you can see the sequence, you can see the hierarchy, the topology of how your lines go and how they affect the individual properties. But from this, if this area went down, you might see, all right, the house that's in red, that guy was underwater. Okay, it may be we just go there and confirm that the utilities are turned off because it could still be wet, or it's demolished, it's gone, it's not inhabitable, as opposed to the ones that are green. If you have any sort of go back and check, but you know those are on, and then the ones that are yellow may be a test. Hey, let's go check. So there may be part of your process could be get the bigger area up and then check specific things. And this can give you a more targeted way to check those, as opposed to, well, they'll call us if it's still a problem. Okay, so it helps you to be a little more deliberate about some of those items. If you'll also notice these dots here, go back, please.
Oh, sorry about that, Scott.
No worries. I'm always adding stuff on Omri. Go back one slide. There we go. You see these dots here. So these dots represent where somebody placed that address, as opposed to where the building. You see they are not on the building. They're in the middle of that green line, which is the parcel. So this relates to geocoding and different levels of geocoding, different levels of, if you guys say, I have an address, I geocode, but you're going to see here 3 different versions of where people can place that. So remember, this is the middle of the parcel. Go ahead, next slide, Omri. And in here, you'll see these red dots. They're just along the road. So this is an older version of geocoding. So actually the red dots were first, then the dots in the middle of parcels. Now the more advanced geocoders, you can see these dots for the blue dots are actually on the houses, on the buildings, okay? Now, if someone says we have rooftop geocoding, I can tell you from all this gray, rooftop geocoding is just something that sometimes you hear, and the parcel stuff is many times what people would call, back in that day, rooftop. So you have to make sure it's truly good rooftop geocoding. But if you're just got the dots along the road and this red area represents your risk area, you really can't tell the relationship between either your customer's property or your own property if you geocoded your own stuff by that way. So that, how do you actually define where something is, can be a very important thing. And by having not just a point for an address, but also the actual buildings and property, then you really understand that relationship better, because your guys' stuff could be in the back of his lot. And if you need to know where the back of the lot is versus where the dot is, this type of data can give you that, where just a dot will not. Next slide, please, Omri. So this is wildfire, and you can see many times wildfire in the past was big, large areas. This covers a large area, but these little polygons are actually much smaller. And each polygon, you can see this list of stuff. All of those different things represent the model that feeds into this to explain your risk of the fire, risk of it spreading, et cetera. So put this up because in my mind, I think of the Pacific Northwest whenever there was the big fire in the Pacific Northwest and it was connected to electric utilities. And so when you look at this and you put your own plant on here and you find areas that are very high probability of fire, this can help you prioritize certain areas to go back and look at those and make sure they're in good condition and that you can reduce or mitigate your risk of something that maybe happened from your facility spreading, and that is directly related to liability. And so we also, that's why we kind of showing you some of the property data and some of the replacement costs, because that also helps you to understand different liabilities that can be exposed in the area. Not just, you know, these are the ones that might be louder and ask for services for repair faster. A lot of different things playing into that. So this risk data for fire risk really speaks to some of the things we have seen recently in the news, and not just how it relates to your customers' properties, but your property as well. Next slide, Omri. All right, here we're talking about expansion planning. So how can property help you with expansion planning? You guys have probably used demographics in the past, where demographics, you can look at areas of growth, and that demographics can tell you 5-year growth estimations. And that's an area, again, that's broader area stuff. You also can use property data where you can visually see here, you can see an area has been subdivided, not built on yet, just subdivided. And depending on how big those blocks are, you can certainly get a sense for the type of zoning that's there and the density of addresses that are going to come in, AKA your future demand of electricity. You also can see the owner. What if a big property was owned by up and coming AI people? In which case, you know, they're going to put a big old building there that's going to demand tons and tons and tons of electricity. So you can get other insights into stuff really in ways that maybe hasn't been thought of in the past by the property ownership, subdivisions, those types of things. And of course, we did talk about a little bit because of this. You can also see where your plant is versus where properties that aren't developed are, and you can plan ahead on how you might want to build out your side to address those areas by either what you see coming or the zoning of it. So behind my house where I grew up, it was a field, but it was zoned as single family housing. Then recently it got zoned as multi-unit housing. So you could see that change in what the developers are expecting to do. What plan might have been in place for electricity back there needs to change when the zoning got replaced to multi-dwelling. Ways that can help you. Next slide, please, Omri. Faster outage restoration. With that property information, we know different things. We know what businesses are there and what is on the property as far as property usage. So if the property usage is a hospital, or if there is we call them POIs by having that businesses, if the POI there is a hospital, certainly those public service areas or public interest areas, you might want to address first. So you can prioritize how you're going to address the individual properties that are in the outage, in part by how that property is, what its category is, what's assigned there, what type of land use it has. You can do, so you'll know if it's a church, you'll know if it's a school, you'll know what type of thing it is, as well as if it's, like I mentioned before, single family house multi-dwelling unit, those types of things. And of course, again, as you compare to your own stuff, you can see from your own topology, if I replace or I fix X part, what else might I turn back on, and how will this handle? Again, we talked about it with the flooding, whether or not there are certain ones that you might have to address or take care of in a different manner. Go ahead, Omri. EV has become very popular as of late. So some of our customers are absolutely using the property data sets for the EV market world. Some data sets we haven't talked about do play into this. We have some data sets where if you have your cell phone, you walk around, you guys have all seen the thing where, hey, we're seeing someone go here like in some crime thing. It's not like that. It's just that you see a propensity of devices in certain areas. And it could be that if you want to set up an EV at a certain place, well, you want to know what the main shopping places are. And or people that you know are high consumers of electricity in their homes, and you can derive that they are EV customers, they're plugging in. Well, you can look where they are and you can see where do people from this place shop a lot on that mobility thing. And that helps you target a general area, and then you can use the property data to look for properties that would be very amenable to co-locating, or if it's an empty property, you can certainly purchase it. So it's going to help you with that kind of addressing that market, which is a new market. And from my experience, a lot of people are trying to figure that market out. Omri? It takes us to this. This is an actual dashboard that we created for a customer. And this dashboard addresses EV, and it really has most of the data sets we have talked about here. Those polygons represent a drive time, let's say, from a certain EV location. So an area where anybody in there is maybe a higher likely user of that EV location. So certainly where there's not a drive time could be a location that's primed to add EV because it's an unserved area. And how might that relate to the properties and consumption that you're seeing whenever you track that? Because you have people's addresses, et cetera. So you certainly can match that up with the property data, the buildings, et cetera, and give intelligence from your own experience to those properties as well. And then the demographics, as we talked about, what areas are growing? The properties, you see one of the things there, garage or no garage. People like to put their vehicle that's plugged in a garage versus leaving it in the front. So things like that make it a higher probability that they're going to be an EV customer versus not. And again, points of interest represents those places that someone goes. So if I put in EV, I plug my car in, where can I walk to entertain myself at a restaurant, shopping, or things like that? And the visitation is that phone thing I talked about. What are the places? Where do we see a lot of visitation going? Where do we see them coming from? So that you can connect up those different items. And then, of course, vehicular data is very similar to the visitation. So this is a actual dashboard that we have put together for a customer that touches on all those different data sets that we have been talking about. And, to some extent, leading maybe to this concept, not just for EV though, but for anything. I believe I'll pass it back to you now, Omri.
Yes, thanks, Scott. That was awesome. Before I go into this quick recap, we only have a couple slides left, then we'll jump into a Q&A. So if you have any questions, feel free to add your questions into the Q&A box. That should be somewhere on your screen. But yes, let's recap, because we just went over a lot of things from what Leah shared to us and what Scott talked about. So how does property data help utilities? There's a few main ways. First, it's going to help you plan and manage your assets, and it's going to be able to respond to outages. So by knowing what you have, where you have it, what the situation on this location is, whether that be from jump into the next point, whether that be the risk at that specific location, what the demand at that specific location is, who's connected to certain assets, knowing all of that and having an overall better picture of your network is going to help you make much faster decisions. You're not going to have to plan things out as they happen. You're going to be able to be proactive and know ahead of time how to respond when events do occur, how to make decisions when you need to make a decision. And also a very important aspect is to have a flexible data structure and to have linked data. So like Leah mentioned in one of her slides, the data we talked about today can be available in a bunch of different formats. And it's really important that you have data that matches your environment, that can be utilized not only in one specific location for one specific analysis, but as much as possible throughout your organization, because data that talks to each other is extremely important. And that's where the true insights come from. So having data that does talk, but that isn't able to talk to each other is really important. But before we jump into the Q&A, let's take a short little step backwards and kind of address as to why we're the ones talking to you about this. Because we did talk about that at the beginning, but who is Korem? Why are we knowledgeable in this space? Well, we're actually the only geospatial one-stop shop in North America, and I've been operating for over 30 years. So we've seen it all, from the very basics that used to be back then to the incredible AI stuff that's being done today. And we help our clients in a few main ways. The first of those is strategic consulting. So we're going to be able to sit down with you and assess, for example, what you currently have, what your needs are, do what we call a health check, which is checking what your geospatial capacities currently are and what your best path forward is. And we also help talking about that path forward in the contract advisory. I don't know if you guys have bought data before directly from vendors, but it can get very complex. There's tons of options out there with a ton of regulation about what you're allowed to do with it, what you're not allowed to do, what the pricing is, overages, things like that. So it's very complex. We can help figure all that out for you. Of course, we can help your teams also not only train to use the data, we can help them benchmark the data, whether that be comparing your data versus the external data sets to see what it is. We could be prototyping ideas for you guys, or we could also integrate it into your systems. So kind of like I talked about in the previous slide about having data that talks to each other and matches your environment. We're definitely not here to rip out what you have, put a plug-and-play solution in place that is one size fits all, because we truly believe one size does not fit all. Every company is different. Even in the same industry, everyone has different needs, different markets, different customers. So figuring out together what the best solution for you specifically is what we're here for, and then help you integrate that, whether that be, well, it goes to the next one, managed services, whether it be on-prem, whether it be through a hybrid solution, on cloud, etc. We are able to figure out with you the best path forward. So let's say you want to get started. You want to figure all this out. What's the best way to get started? The easiest and fastest way is to really get in touch with us. Feel free to scan that QR code. It's going to be on the next slide as well. So don't worry, it's going to bring you to our contact us page, where you're going to be able to essentially fill out for get in touch with us, and we'll be able to start talking. And from there, we're going to evaluate your needs together. Then we'll figure out the path forward, whether that be through a data trail, for example. It could be through a proof of concept. It could be a lot of things. Either way, moral of the story, get in touch. Let's talk. It's the best way to do things these days. Let's not forget the human aspect. We like talking to you and knowing what your issues are and seeing how we can solve it together. And on that note, it gets us to the Q&A. So let us see. Do we have any questions? There is a first one that got sent here early on, which was, where is the data available? Scott, I think the data is available in North America, so mostly US and Canada, but there's some differences there. Do you want to talk us through those?
Yep, and I believe I got another one that's even longer. I'll read it. Do you have a general statement on your spatial coverage and quality of parcels, addresses, and buildings across North America, and also the attributes within? Are there any gaps anywhere, areas where you do not have geometry and or attributes?
Good comment.
Wonderful question. So the US and Canada are both covered, and believe it or not, we do have some data in Europe as well. Quite frankly, the US is a little more developed than Canada. So as far as the property attributes, we have a little more attributes in the US than we do in Canada. The number of attributes, I believe it's over 100. So it's very large. The little graphic we showed you shows only a small amount. And so we certainly can give you some information. If you can maybe let us know who you are, we can share with you the documentation, or even the document schema, and show you actually what they are, and you can read into those. As far as, are there any gaps? We have every province and state in the US. We have every county in the US. In Canada, we have all of Canada. There are some areas where, I guess you would say, in my tongue-in-cheek way of saying stuff, if you understand good enough for government work, there are some areas that just don't have as much capability. So some of the attribution is not there, and there are some small areas up in Canada, not entire provinces, that the polygons are just not created yet, but those are on a case-by-case basis. And for the most part, that's going to be more on the rural side on the whole in general. And there you go.
There is one about the accuracies of geocoding there. You talked about that briefly with the interpolation, street interpolation and all that, but how do people know what they have?
So we've been around for a long time. We certainly can help you out, and we love talking to you. Your geocoding engine, typically, if it's of even reasonable quality, it's going to return some sort of code. And that code within the documentation will tell you how good it is, but unless you're a GIS person, sometimes it can seem like Greek. So we certainly can help you out with that idea of it. And it's very much dependent on the type of geocoder. So one of the ways you could tell, just like I did, if you generally put it on a map and look at a lot of different areas, you can get a sense for what they're capable of. But please reach out. We'd love to talk to you, and we're familiar with many different geocoders out there and the levels of accuracy. And what we've done for some customers is we might do something kind of a bake-off or a proof of concept where we will actually take stuff and run it through multiple geocoders that we have access to and just flat out show you the results.
There's a question there that I can answer, which is, do you have a free demo products? What I can talk to that is the demo that Leah shared, that little UI that we created that's meant to really showcase the data, what's available, how it looks, different ways you can access it, is going to soon be available on our website, where you're going to be able to sign up and play around with it. I have a few credits to try that out. It should be in the coming weeks available, so make sure to follow our LinkedIn or to get in touch with us, and we'll be able to notify you when that is available. How does your program manage power distribution, poles, associated assets, substations? Well, first, we don't have one specific program. It's a set of data. But Scott, do you have anything more to add to that?
Yeah, so that type of stuff, substations, where the poles are, for the most part, what I have experienced in the industry is that's people's own proprietary information that they do not typically share out to vendors. So I can't sell to somebody else a competitor's location of their facilities. However, from my experience, most companies have a GIS department internal where they have mapped those different components. And by mapping those different components, that's exactly what we have on our side with the property data and the risk stuff. Those types of things can be compared in a GIS. Now, the demo that's an API, it used to be whenever you did web mapping, you just got a picture back. And you couldn't compare that picture on the web to your own stuff in a GIS. However, now with this graph API, you actually are getting coordinate information back, and you can develop your own internal service-based, web-based type of application if you do not want to work with the large size data sets at the property, because it is large. You can imagine all the properties in different countries have a lot of data. So there's ways depending on your issue and your question.
There's the aspect too, if you need to map your assets, let's say you have the locations but you don't have any way to visualize it, that's something we can help you with in figuring out what the best way to visualize it is, and we can definitely recommend and tell you some different softwares and things like that that will help in that sense. If you don't have the GIS, the geographic information softwares that Scott was talking about already.
Yeah, and we did it for a utility. It wasn't electrical, it was fiber optic, but yeah, we took their CAD data, which wasn't geographic, and we were able to create a system that read in their CAD data and did a pretty darn good job of placing it on the earth and into a GIS. And there was only some minor cleanup that needed to be done on that.
For now, that's all the questions, but we still have 10 minutes, everybody, if you do have more questions, so feel free. Scott, do you have any thoughts? You always have random thoughts and tidbits to share while we wait for questions.
It's just that Korem we've done a lot of stuff in many different industries. And so that brings different viewpoints and different ideas to help solve unique problems. We look at you to know your business. You look at us to understand geography, understand location, and how our knowledge of location can help you run your business better.
It's a very good point. We work with companies across a bunch of industries, whether it be retail, commercial real estate, insurance, banking, transportation. So we've seen lots of different use cases, and sometimes solutions from other industries could be the right one for you, things that you might not have thought of yourselves.
I mean, I understand this to be mostly electric, which is why I didn't mention this, but there is a gas utility, a couple gas utilities, where they use the property data because as a pipeline, if something happens to that pipeline, they need to know their risk of the areas around. So we've actually take that data and boil it down to more of a targeted, here's the buildings, and we tag the buildings over 4 stories because that's what they care about. We tag the buildings that are more like a warehouse, not intended for human occupation, or places that are, like we talked about, churches, etc. If you're a telephonic utility, those addresses, they had a report they had to do of houses passed, and really I guess maybe I don't know if electric has to do houses passed or not, but that address data set, it's not one dot for the entire complex. If there's 100 apartments in that complex, there's 100 dots there. And so when you do your homes passed, and in the past you just went ahead and said, I have 6,000 in this block group, then it became, or the zip code, then it became how many in a block group. Now, as I understand it, if you have a homes passed report to do, you're actually having to give the addresses. And so, yeah, you may have some of those utilities, they always had addresses that people have served, but certainly if it's an overlay or competitive type of situation, well, you don't know who's not using it. So that fabric data set can give you everybody, and now you truly have a homes passed as opposed to just the ones that you are servicing.
All right, yeah, it does seem like we're out of questions. I was trying to save some time, but we only have about 5 minutes. So thank you everyone for listening to us. We hope you at least learned something from this presentation. If you have any questions, if you want to get in touch, either scan that QR code. Actually, I forgot to mention, but my email is right there on the screen, so feel free to email me. I can point you in the right direction as well, or we can just sit down and chat together. And on that note, I'm going to hand it back over to Megan.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much. That was a fantastic presentation, and a special thanks to the Korem team for making today's session possible again. And for everyone else that's tuning in, keep an eye out for a follow-up email with a link for the replay. Before you go, please take a quick moment to also fill out our survey. Your feedback always helps us and means so much to us, just to make sure that every webinar is even better the next time. So on behalf of the Energy Central team, thank you for spending part of your day with us, and we look forward to seeing you guys at a next upcoming event. Have a great day, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.